If you've been listening to podcasts, reading books, going to conferences for the past 6 months or 6 years, maybe longer, but your life and your business, your career basically still look the same, this episode is for you. I want to talk about a hard truth almost nobody will say out loud. Information is the painkiller that hides the cost of inaction. You think you have a knowledge problem. You don't. You have an action problem. And I'm going to prove it to you today. I'm going to show you what it could be costing you. And then I'm going to ask you to do one thing today, not someday, today. So my name is Todd DeWalt. You're listening to the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com, where we are all about helping construction business owners who are working too many hours with too much stress and too little profit install systems in their business so their business runs without them. So if you're driving, stay with me. Or if you're at the gym, if you're in a piece of equipment, stay with me. Or if you're in the office, you want to close email for a bit. This episode might sting a little bit, but it could change the next few years of your life. I'm not really sure how this is going to go, but it needs to be said. So let's get started. Most construction business owners I talk to are really smart. They're not dumb. You're not dumb. You're really smart. You're listening to podcasts. You are reading books. You're watching YouTube. You're going to events. You're signing up for software. You're learning. You're doing research. You're educating yourself. But here's the problem. You may be using information like a painkiller. Let me explain. You have this spike of pain. One day, you get fed up and realize, I'm buried in day-to-day. I'm getting too many phone calls. I'm stuck in firefighting. My team needs me for everything. I'm not present with my family. Damn it, I can't take a vacation without being on call. Maybe you hear yourself think or say, I really own a job. I don't own a business. And that creates some pain, some frustration. You feel it in your chest. But instead of actually doing something, you take a hit of information, right? You get a little bump of information. You listen to a podcast. You go on Amazon and you order a book. You watch a webinar, and that feels like progress, right? You get a little relief. You get a little glimmer of hope. And you say, I'm working on it. Yes, I'm making progress. I'm working on it. I am going to fix this. I care. I take action. I get shit done. And you get this momentary bit of relief because you got some information, right? But that tiny little bit of relief, that little hit, lowers the pain, lowers the frustration just enough so that you can tolerate the situation a little bit longer. Another day, another week, and you go right back to the same day today. And then you find yourself in the same situation a few days, a few weeks, a few months later. Nothing actually changed. You just numbed yourself. That's why I say information can be the painkiller that hides the cost of inaction. A lot of people don't want you to think about this. They don't want you to know this. People who sell business books, they sell information. They don't want you to know about this. There are people with YouTube channels and people in education. They don't want you to think about this. They want you to think education is the answer. You just need to learn more. But information can be the painkiller that hides the cost of inaction. I'm going to talk about this cost of inaction more in a few minutes. So because you're not taking action, because you're not making a decision, you're bleeding out every day. You're getting hit with the cost of inaction, the cost of indecision in the form of your work hours. You're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I talked to a guy this morning who's working 6 12-hour days a week. You're paying for it in the form of stress with your health, your sleep quality, your waistline, your blood pressure. You're paying for it in missed opportunities because you don't have the time to go after opportunities, or maybe you don't have the confidence to go after those opportunities. In your business, your relationships are taking a hit. Your kids are getting older. Your spouse is getting further away from you because of this business. You don't see an invoice for it, so you pretend like it's free, but there is a cost of inaction. There is a cost of indecision. If Navy SEALs behaved like most business owners, they'd be dead. The longer you sit in this, I'm not sure yet, the longer you are indecisive, the more time the enemy has to maneuver on you. I talk about Jocko Willink quite a bit, the author of Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership. And Jocko talks about in combat how he emphasizes that indecision is a fatal flaw that leads to paralysis, as waiting for perfect information is impossible and delays allow the enemy to dictate the engagement. So here are some of the key aspects of the danger of indecision in combat. Paralysis and victimhood. He says indecision causes a leader to become a passenger rather than a driver of the situation. Instead of compelling events to meet the plan, the leader becomes paralyzed and they become a victim. There's what he calls the myth of perfect information. It's a myth that at some point you'll have all of the information that you need, and waiting for 100% certainty ensures that you will never make a decision. And he talks about how decisions are made for you. If you fail to make a decision, the situation or the enemy will make it for you. So in combat, indecision is deadly. There's a COI, there's a cost of inaction. Combat leaders know it's better to make a decent decision now based on the information you have and then course correct rather than wait for perfect information and wait for that perfect decision that comes too late. And most of you are doing the opposite of that in your business, right? Now, the chances of getting killed because of inaction are very low as a business owner, but there's still a cost of inaction, okay? Yes, the chances of getting killed due to inaction are very low, but there's still a cost of inaction. You may be terrified of picking the wrong plan, making the wrong decision, but you're completely ignoring the much bigger risk, which is no plan. The bigger risk is no decision. The biggest risk could be more of the same. You overestimate the cost of a wrong move, and you massively underestimate the cost of not moving at all. You're underestimating the cost of inaction. Think about this. Imagine you ran into a guy at a kid's soccer game or on the street or at an event, and he's a big guy. And he tells you through the course of conversation that he goes about 450 pounds. And he goes on to tell you that he eats McDonald's twice a day, every day, 7 days a week. But then he goes on to tell you something that doesn't really seem to align with what he just said. He said, I am fascinated by nutrition. I'm reading nutrition books. I'm researching the perfect food plan. I have MyFitnessPal app on my phone and I'm dialing things in. I'm researching it. And he tells you he's been interviewing personal trainers for months now, and he wants to make sure that their credentials are legitimate. He's looking at gyms. He wants to make sure the equipment's right, that they have the right letters behind their name, that they have the right credentials. And then you say, well, how long have you been researching all of this? And he says, about 6 months. I want to make sure that I make the right decision here. And meanwhile, he's eating 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, racking up the pounds. Now, you might look at him and say, dude, I'm no fitness expert. I don't have any letters behind my name, but you might say, look, you're better off just to pick a food plan and a trainer. You don't need the perfect plan. You need a decent plan, and you need to start today. You might go on to tell him, it seems like you're obsessing over the tiny risk of picking an imperfect plan, picking the wrong trainer, and completely ignoring the massive risk of a heart attack while you're researching. You could literally die while you're researching, while you're tweaking your MyFitnessPal app. You might say to yourself, this guy is blind to the cost of inaction. Here's another example. Imagine an NFL quarterback, professional football player. He's on an NFL team's roster, and he spends all of his time in the film room. He lives in the playbook. He knows every play by heart. But when it's time to practice and he gets a shot, the coach calls his number and says, get in there and run some plays. He says, you know what? I'm not quite ready yet. I just need to study the playbook a little bit more. I'll run the plays when I've really mastered them. I'm just not quite ready yet. I just need more information. He believes that information is the game. But the truth is, right? What's the purpose of the playbook? The purpose of the playbook is to run plays. What's the purpose of running plays? It's to score points and win the game, right? The purpose of information is action. The purpose of information is implementation. The purpose of information is change. Nobody gets a Super Bowl ring for most film hours studied or the best memory of the playbook. They get rings for putting points on the board and for winning. But unfortunately, that's how a lot of you are treating your business and your life. You're like the 400-pound guy reading diet books and interviewing trainers. You're the quarterback hiding in the film room, and you're calling it being responsible. Now, this is where I could lose you. All right, this is where it gets a little uncomfortable. Okay, I'm just warning you, this could sting a little bit. So if I asked you, if we were sitting down, if you came to one of our events and sitting at the bar, and I said, hey, are you an action taker? Like, would you consider yourself an action taker? Do you get shit done? Most likely you would say, absolutely. You get stuff done. Like, yeah, you make things happen. You're the kind of guy or the kind of gal that gets shit done. You make things happen. And you're right on your projects. If there's a failed inspection, a check that has to be collected, payroll that has to be made, a problem that needs to be solved, some sort of logistical nightmare that has to be worked through, if it's urgent, then you jump into action. You figure it out. You're decisive. You are an action taker on the urgent things. But if you're being honest, you might say, when it comes to the important stuff, the strategic stuff, the non-urgent things in your business, like systematizing your business, hiring the right people, clarifying roles, putting processes in place, maybe even taking care of your health, for the things like working on your marriage, the non-urgent but really important stuff. If you're being honest, you might realize that you stall on these things. You don't take action. You do a lot of research. There's a lot of thinking, but not a lot of action. You become that guy or gal who's been thinking about it, researching it for months, maybe years. The truth is, you may see yourself as a leader. You may tell yourself things like, I'm a leader. I am a person of action. I do what needs to get done. I get shit done. But if you look in the mirror, your real behavior on the important stuff could be delay, avoidance, numbing out with more information, doing more research, kicking the can down the road. And that gap between who you say you are and how you actually behave, this is where the mental and emotional misery lives. You tell yourself you're a person of action, but you don't take action on the important stuff. That's what causes a lot of your stress. So I don't want to fix your feelings with this episode. I want to fix the behavior. So let me read some of the exact scripts that are running in your head. Okay, I call this mental malware. These are the things you're telling yourself. They sound great. They sound responsible, but could be keeping you stuck. So if one of these hits a little close to home, just listen and sit with it, okay? Here are some of the things that could be running in your head. Things are better than they were a year ago. We're making some progress, right? Hey, at least we're not a shit show like insert fill in the blank subcontractor or competitor or company you used to work at. At least we're not as bad as those guys. You might say, it's not that bad. It's okay. Things are not that bad. Could be better, but they're okay. Maybe you say, I just need a little more information before I make a move. I need to do a little more research. I need to talk to somebody else. I need to read another blog post. I just need a little more information. Or maybe you tell yourself this, once this job or this season or this year is over, then I'm really going to focus on fill in the blank. When I have more time, I'm going to do this. I just need a little more time. I need more time. When I have more time, I'm going to do this. If you're thinking about working with a coaching program or getting systems in place in your business, you might say, I don't want to pick the wrong coach or the wrong program. I need to be smart about this. I need to be 100% confident that I pick the right program. Maybe you say, I already know what I need to do. I just need time to do it. Maybe you've been telling yourself that for a few years now. Here's one. It would be irresponsible of me to invest in the business right now. It would be irresponsible of me to spend money on coaching right now with everything that's going on. I just don't have the mental bandwidth to do it. It would be irresponsible of me to do it. So I'm going to do it in the future. You might say, I am working on it. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm reading books. I'm studying. I'm taking notes. I am working on it. Or you might say, our business is more complex than most. Our business, our projects are complex. Our clients are unique. I can't just plug in any system because our business and our projects are so unique. And those thoughts, they sound wise, right? They sound prudent. They sound thoughtful. They sound responsible, right? But the truth is, what they're actually saying is, quote, in many cases, I use information as a painkiller. A lot of those excuses, if you pull back the covers, what they're actually saying is, I use information as a painkiller, and it's actually keeping you stuck. These responsible thoughts, these thoughts that sound prudent, they're actually keeping you stuck. And they're how you use information as a drug to numb the pain of staying the same. Okay? This is how you use information as a drug, as a painkiller to numb the pain of staying the same, to numb the pain of the cost of inaction. So here's what I've seen over and over. People have huge motivations for short bursts. They have huge motivation for tiny moments of time. And if you don't convert that feeling into a decision and an action on the calendar, it just evaporates. John Maxwell calls it the law of diminishing intent. When you have a thought, you have high intent. Right now, if you're thinking, yes, we have to do something, your intent is as high as it's ever going to be. And as time goes on, your intent diminishes. And eventually, given enough time, a few days, a few weeks, a few months, that intent will just go away altogether. It's the law of diminishing intent. So the game is not about getting more motivated or getting more information. The game is collapsing the time between motivation and action, collapsing the time between high intent and taking action, right? So let me show you what this looks like in real life. Some of you may have heard my podcast interview with Daniel Queen, owner of Built by Coalition in Charlotte. It's in episode 417 of the podcast. I'll give you a quick rundown. Daniel had been building custom homes for years. He started his company during COVID. He was a really good builder. He cares about his clients, really sharp guy. And he found this podcast. And he did what a lot of you do. He would listen on his runs, on his drives. And he said every episode he'd think, that's good. We need to apply this. Or, yeah, that's exactly what I'm dealing with. And he reached out to me once early on when he was just starting the business. And we talked about coaching. And according to Daniel, I told him, based on what I've seen, I said, quote, I don't think you can afford not to get help right now. You're building a business from scratch, end quote. And he did what a lot of us would do. He said, in his head, cash flow's tight. I know what I'm doing. I'll circle back later once I'm more established, right? Translation, if he's being honest, he might say he was more afraid of making an imperfect move than he was of doing 3 more years just like this. So he went back to the grind for 3 years. And what did that cost him? Well, he was trying to be an estimator, a spec writer, handle pre-construction, be a project manager, do business development, and be an owner all in one. He said he was flipping his brain every 5 minutes between builder and business owner, carrying all the responsibility for quality, client interaction, getting the next job, and the future of the business. And he was working hard, but he was still the bottleneck for everything important. And he said he just kept listening to the podcast. He kept agreeing, he kept planning to really fix it later. And that's the cost of inaction. You don't see the cost of inaction on a P&L. You'll never get an invoice for it. It doesn't show up on a bank statement, but it's real. And then finally, a few years later, he called again. And this time, he basically said, quote, I thought I could spin the hamster wheel fast enough. I thought I could figure it out on my own. I can't. I don't even know what I don't know. I need help, end quote. So he joined our Systematize Your Construction Business program. And then what happened? Well, after going through that program and joining our CEO Alliance, he hired the right people, hired a bookkeeper, a construction manager. We helped him to clarify roles so that everyone on his team now has their big 5 most important things. That gave them clarity and then gave him the permission to let go. They built checklists and systems together so his team owned them instead of having processes shoved down their throat by Daniel. Pre-construction got dialed in. Estimating is now split across his team. And he said, actually, his team does it better than he does now. His anxiety about dropping the ball for clients went down because there are, in his words, there are guardrails and there's a team that actually knows what's expected. And this freed him up to do what he's best at: sales, building client relationships without micromanaging in the field. And the biggest result that he talked about in episode 417 of the podcast, he said it was peace of mind. Peace of mind was the biggest result. Not that the business is perfect, not that he doesn't work hard, but he's not sweeping garages when he should be bringing in the next contract. He's not showing up on job sites where his construction manager literally tells him, "Why are you here? You don't need to be here." He's not carrying the full weight alone anymore. And here's the line that hit me. He basically said, "I thought I didn't have time or money to get help. I realized that I actually didn't have time not to." He said, "I thought I didn't have time or money to get help. I realized I actually didn't have time not to get help." That's what the cost of inaction looks like in real life. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about you. If you're honest, what has your inaction or your indecision cost you over the past 12 months? Maybe you have things dialed in, but how many 60-hour, 70-hour, how many 80-hour weeks have you stacked up in the past 12 months? How many times have you told your family, "Hey, look, after this job, after this month, or after this year, things are going to be different. 2026 is going to be different." Maybe you said 2025 is going to be different. Maybe you said 2024 is going to be different. How many nights and weekends have you spent catching up on stuff that somebody else could or should be doing? How many opportunities did you miss because your brain was fried from putting out fires? Or how many opportunities did you pass up on because you were frankly worried you couldn't handle the work? You didn't have the confidence to take on the work. How much more tangled and dependent on you has your business become in the past 12 months? And then here's the scary part. If nothing changes, what does the next 3 years look like? What does the next 5 years look like? If we're talking 3 years from now and you're working the same hours, dealing with the same chaos, same stress level, you're just older, more tired, less hair, less healthy, have to buy pants with a bigger waistline. Your kids are older, just maybe a little more distant. Your team could be more convinced that, well, this is just the way it is here. Maybe some of your key team members leave because of the frustration. And your business is harder to sell. Maybe it's less valuable because the only way it works is with you in the middle of it. It's like a machine that depends on you. You think the big risk is, what if I pick the wrong plan? What if I join the wrong program? What if I make a wrong decision? What if it doesn't work? The truth is, it's very possible that the cost of indecision is higher than the cost of a wrong decision. The cost of you staying exactly where you are is higher than you potentially taking the wrong step. Imperfect is not the risk. Inaction and indecision, that's the risk. So every month you keep things as is, it's not neutral. Every month that you just keep doing the same thing, it's training your business, your family, and your own brain that this is your life now. And the thing is, it's easier to do the same painful, dumb thing one more week, one more month, one more quarter, in many cases, than to try something new, because you believe that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So you think, well, it's better just to do the same dumb thing because I know this pain, I know this discomfort. New discomfort could be worse. So The cost of indecision is higher than the cost of making a wrong decision. Imperfect is not the risk. Inaction is the risk. Now, I want to say something that might surprise you. Okay. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a few months, a year, maybe more, and you're still working the same hours as you were 6 months ago or a year ago, if you've been listening to this podcast and you're still in the same role on your projects, if your business is still designed to fail without you, if you're still putting off some of the same big decisions, then for you, this podcast is not educational anymore. It's entertainment. And you could be using this podcast as information, as a painkiller. I mean this for your best interest. If you're going to keep consuming information, consuming this podcast and doing nothing with it, maybe it's time for you to stop listening and actually take some action. It may be time for you to stop consuming information and actually put something into action. Make a firm decision and put something into action. Not because I don't want you here. It's because I actually want you to take action. I don't want to make you feel better about staying the same. I don't want to numb you to the pain. I want this to be the episode where you draw a line in the sand and you actually take action. Here's the other option. You don't have to quit listening, but you don't get to keep listening and doing nothing without being challenged. So I want you to use this episode as a turning point. Okay? So here's how we do that. I want to give you a proof of action challenge. Not a mindset exercise, not a journaling prompt. I don't want you to write something down in your unicorn journal. I want to challenge you to take a real visible action that another human can see. So step one, if you're up for taking this challenge, step one, identify one decision you've been avoiding. You already know what it is, right? What is the one thing you've been putting off? You've been saying, when we have more time, we'll do this. I need to do a little more research. I need to think about it, blah, blah, blah. Identify one decision you've been avoiding. It could be that hire you've been putting off. It could be that difficult conversation you know you need to have. It could be a person you need to let go. Maybe you need to raise your prices. You need to fire a client. Maybe it's committing to get help with your business instead of trying to just muscle through it on raw effort alone. Don't overthink it. The first thing that popped into your head is probably the thing. Step two is make the decision. You don't need time to make a decision. Okay. Decisions happen instantly. So make the decision right now, decide. Not, I'll think about it some more. Not, yeah, I'm going to make a decision. That's a great idea. Not, I'll do that someday. Not, I'm going to do a little more research. Either, yes, I'm doing this, or no, I'm not doing this. And then I accept the consequences. Those are your two options. Decide either, yes, I'm going to do it, or no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to have that conversation. I'm not going to talk to this person. I'm not going to make this hire. And then I accept the consequences. But make a firm decision. And you don't need much time to make a decision. Step three, as soon as this episode is over, send an email, make the call, send the text that puts that decision into motion. If it's a hire that you need to make, email the recruiter or post the job. If it's a fire, send the text, hey, meet me at the shop or at the office tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. If it's raising prices, email the client. If it's getting help, fill out the form, book the call. If there's a client you need to fire, send the message, schedule the call, put it on the calendar. You don't get partial credit for thinking about it. You get credit for visible, measurable action. That's your proof of action. So you want to be an action taker? Prove it to yourself today. Make the decision. Take action, and then send me an email, todd@constructionleadingedge.com. Let me know, what action did you take? todd@constructionleadingedge.com. So now, for a lot of you, if you're being honest, that one decision is obvious. You saying, I have to systematize my business. I can't keep doing this alone. You've been listening to the podcast. You've heard the stories like Daniel Queen's. You know what we do in the Systematize Your Construction Business program. We help you design your strategic blueprint, clearly define roles and responsibilities, dial in your pre-construction process. That's the secret profit phase that eliminates chaos. Big companies are great pre-construction companies. You realize I've got to become a great pre-construction company. You need to get freed up from the day-to-day. You need to get off the hamster wheel. But you've been saying, yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, I'm not quite ready yet, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it later. I'll do it when things slow down. I'll do it when cash flow is better, when we start that next project. So let me just be blunt. If this episode hits you like a not so gentle kick in the gonads, if you see yourself in all of this and your gut says, I need to talk to Todd's team. If that's you, then not booking a call after this is you choosing information as your painkiller again. And I don't want you to do that. Okay. So here's how this works very simply. If your decision is you need help systematizing your business, you know you need to help, you're not quite sure if you're ready, you're not quite sure if you have time, you're not quite sure about anything, but you know something has to change. Here's how this works. Open up the show notes on this episode. There's a link that says schedule a business evaluation call. Click on that link, or you can go to our website, constructionleadingedge.com/apply. APPLY, or just go to constructionleadingedge.com. You'll see a big yellow button that says apply. You'll answer a few questions so we can learn about your business. Then if it's a fit, you'll see a calendar with times to schedule a 30, 45-minute call with my team. And this is not for everybody. You may not qualify. We keep the number of builders we take on in a month very limited. We only work with a small group of people at a time. So we're not right for everybody. So if we don't have time on the calendar or we tell you you're not a fit, please don't be offended. So while this is fresh, while you're feeling this, don't say, yeah, I'm going to do this tonight, or as soon as I get in the office tomorrow morning, or I'll do it this weekend, because you won't. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is, yeah, I'm going to do that later. So life's going to rush back in. The fires are going to pop back up. This feeling is going to fade. The law of diminishing intent will kick in. So right now, while you're listening, go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply or click the link in the show notes. Fill out a couple of questions, grab a spot over the next few days. If you're driving, use Siri or whatever to set a reminder like, hey, Siri, remind me at 7 p.m. to book a call with Todd's team. Then when that reminder goes off, treat it like a meeting with a client. Honor it. You don't have to work with us, but I do want you to stop lying to yourself that later is a plan. So let me leave you with this. Information is the painkiller that hides the cost of inaction. You think the big risk is picking the wrong plan or making the wrong decision. The real risk here is waking up 3 years from now in the exact same spot. And the truth is, if you don't do anything, where you wake up 3 years from now is probably going to be worse. Just older or tired with fewer options, with a family and a team who stopped believing you when you said, next year is going to be different. Imperfect is not the risk. Inaction, indecision, that's the risk. So don't let this be just another good episode. Pick the decision, take the action, send the email, make the call, book a call with my team. And if that decision is to finally get serious about systematizing your construction business, go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, schedule a call with my team, and let's see if we can help. Thanks for listening. My name's Todd DeWalt. See you next time.